People don't like change, and neither does our planet. The problem is we're the one changing it, and it's damaging the Earth. It's a major issue, and the issue I'm talking about here is climate change, or known as global warming. And pretending like it doesn't exist won't fix anything. I've recently been able to really dive into some research about global warming and find scientific evidence and facts about why it exists. You can look anywhere and kind of see the evidence, whether it's the sea level rising, the temperature increasing, or the atmosphere being filled with toxic levels of CO2 or carbon dioxide. You can see that Earth is being damaged. The least severe of this damage, though, is the rising sea level. Mark Moslin said in his book, Global Warming, a very short introduction, which was published by Oxford University Press. He wrote in there, over the last 100 years, the global sea level has risen by about 4 to 14 centimeters. Now that's going to vary by city to city, but it's still something that's kind of alarming, and it's not as alarming whenever you consider the natural increase of the sea level, which is Earth's tides, which pulls that number down to 2 to 7 centimeters, but it's still something to be concerned about. And the reason it's rising is because of the ice sheets are melting. The most common example of this is Antarctica, but you can also look at Greenland, for example. But it's difficult to measure how badly they're melting due to the lack of scientific activity in those areas in the past. Just now we really started researching them. But even just now with satellite imagery, we've been able to see them actually shrinking, and scientists have even discovered a hole forming in one of them. But we don't know if that's part of the Earth's natural cycle or not, since we've never had a photo of it before. Not only the ice sheets melting, but the polar ice caps are thinning. And Mark Moslin's, going back to his book, he wrote a report of submarines noticing that polar ice caps had thinned up to 3 meters in some places. And that's bad because as they're thinning, it's going to keep raising the sea level, which is going to keep creating more problems. And that can have a drastic effect. An article written by Jennifer Francis titled Meltdown, which was published by Scientific American, it reads, about 170 U.S. coastal communities will experience chronic inundation within 20 years. And that's just in the U.S. And again, that's due to the rise in sea level. But what causes that rise in sea level? And that's the rapid increase in temperature that we've been seeing, which in turn melts the ice caps, which in turn rises the sea level. But not only does that increase in temperature make the sea level rise, it also damages and harms a lot of animals. The best instance of this is the walrus. And what I'm talking about here is what you can actually see even on Netflix's documentary called Our Planet. And what happens in there is they were trying to video and show the walrus's migration, but what they sadly witnessed was that since the walruses, what they normally do is they migrate, they go to an ice cap and they rest there. But since it's melted, they've had to keep swimming farther to find more land. And when they finally do find land, there's no ice caps. It's just rocks and steep terrain. And walruses aren't made for that. But since there's so many walruses following behind them, they're forced up the cliff and they have no method of getting down. And when they're finally rested and it's time to go back home and go to the water, since the walrus is not made for a rocky terrain, they end up falling. And it becomes a very gruesome and very dark graveyard of just walruses. And the Atlantic commented on this with an article by Ed Young called The Disturbing Walrus Scene in Our Planet, where he said, the reason for the falls may be complicated, but it's clear that climate change is affecting the walruses. And it's all because the temperature is melting the ice caps. But how severe is this increase in temperature? MP Singh said in his article, Global Warming, or his book, Global Warming in Forest, which was published by the Dia Publishing House. In it, he wrote, estimates now predict a warming of 1.5 to 4.5 degrees Celsius by the time carbon dioxide concentration has doubled from the pre-industrial revolution levels. He can also be quoted by saying, whereas cold oceans absorb huge quantities of carbon dioxide, warm oceans absorb much less. So what he's talking about there is a snowballing effect from the warmth of the Earth, increasing warmth from the ocean, and just kind of getting worse and worse each year. So the high temperatures are causing the ice caps to melt, which is causing the sea level to rise. But what's causing the high temperature in the first place? And that is where we get to the main source of global warming, which is carbon dioxide emissions. Ram Narayan Chattopadhyay said in his book, ASM International, which was titled Green Tribology, Green Surface Engineering, and Global Warming. in which he wrote, "However, excessive emissions by industries in the man-made sphere, that is, the anthosphere, have resulted in the loss of dynamic balance, causing a dramatic increase in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere." What that does is kind of create a catastrophic chain of events, which is we've already listed with the sea level and the temperature increasing. But the CO2 itself isn't really the problem, it's the excess of it. See, Earth was meant to have a certain amount of CO2 or carbon dioxide in its atmosphere. What we have done, we've created an extreme excess of it, which is very damaging. That extreme excess comes mainly from industrial factories, but also power plants, and we're hitting record high emissions nowadays. CO2 emissions are mainly the main center in the cause of global warming. And some people can argue that the rise of sea levels and that the increase in temperature is natural, but the CO2 emissions are not natural at all. That's something that humans, we have unfortunately caused, and we are making gigatons of emissions each year. The rising CO2 levels has a drastic effect on our planet, and it has caused rising temperatures, which cause rising CO2 emissions as well. And as damaging as that is, it's pretty hard to ignore. But if you still don't believe in global warming, look around. I can sit here and give facts and statistics all day, and you can choose to ignore it all you want. But eventually, if the CO2 levels keep rising like they are, and you won't have a chance soon enough to believe it, because you may be living in a world more damaged than ever before.